This module is on task analysis. This module will explain how to write an effective task analysis and identify the appropriate chaining procedure to use when teaching the task analysis. The goal is to explain the importance of breaking down a skill into smaller parts in order to systematically teach each unit of a chain skill to students. A task analysis is taking a task and breaking it up into teachable components or parts. But when selecting a skill to teach, you first want to think about the target skill and whether it is a discrete response or a chain of responses. A discrete response involves a single step with a clear beginning and ending. For example, activating a switch or saying hello. Chain tasks are skills that require multiple responses to complete. For example, hand washing or doing division. In your activity that you completed prior to the lecture on making a Voki to answer the question, was that a discrete response or a chain task? Most definitely a chain task, because there were multiple steps for you to complete to make your Voki. A task analysis is the process of taking a chain task and breaking it up into teachable components or a set of discrete steps. Examples of skills that can be taught using a task analysis would be using a drink machine, purchasing food at a fast food restaurant, progressing through an algebraic equation, or participating in a literacy lesson. These are just a few examples of chain tasks that could be used using a task analysis. So here is an example of a task analysis for putting on pants. You see that these are steps of a chain skill that are broken down into a series of discrete responses or step by step, and they're linked sequentially. So you pick up your pants, you locate the zipper or the button, you turn the pants so the zipper or button is face up, you hold the waistband, and then what would make this even more helpful? If you were thinking about this as a teaching strategy, what would make it more helpful for the student? Hopefully you're thinking to use pictures. Here's an example of a morning routine task analysis with pictures. This still breaks down the steps for the student and just adds that picture representation. Using visual supports is very common in using task analysis for students with disabilities. But also visual supports are used in making recipes. Think about how much easier it is to make something if you can see the picture. Here, this is a portobello mushroom cap pizza, and it shows you how to break it apart and add the pizza sauce, where you add the pizza sauce, and there's much more steps. This is just a picture of how this makes it easier to follow a step-by-step process if you have that visual support. These days, with the use of technology, we have apps or applications that people can use on tablets and on phones to help them with scheduling. This is just an example of one of the apps that you can do a first then schedule, and basically you just enter in your own voice, your own images from your computer or from your phone, and then you create your schedule or task analysis and just create the steps within there. This is very useful for students with disabilities, and it's very useful for all students. Think about how we all have some type of tablet or electronic device and how helpful this would be to help students with a task analysis. There are lots of functions of a task analysis. The identification of teachable component parts serves as a basis for data collection. This helps steps set occasion by the way the task is taught. It saves time, and then it allows more than one person to work with students, and it can be used as a homeschool communication tool. So now let's talk about using task analytic instruction, or how are we going to teach this? So we want to select a goal, write a quality task analysis, select instructional strategies, and then choose a data collection method for actually using the task analysis. So when you are writing your task analysis, there are a few things to consider. After watching someone perform the sequence of skills, determine what the critical steps are that you need to include in your task analysis. And then consider partial participation. Even though some students with disabilities cannot independently perform all the steps of a given activity or task, they often can be taught to perform selected components or even an adapted version of the task. So partial participation is used to help a learner be more active in a task, make more choices in how the task will be carried out, and provide more control over the activity. And then field test the task analysis by just having someone else, a stranger, someone that's not part of developing the task analysis, have them perform the steps. When we get to your activity in this module, you're going to write a task analysis, and then you're going to switch with a partner or peer and have them do the task and give you feedback of this. You want to be careful of what you include in the steps. Once, when I taught high school, we had a coffee service that we provided for my students. We wrote a task analysis, and we had the room numbers, the names of the coffee, all of the different components of the step-by-step sequential steps to get the coffee from the coffee maker to the delivering all the way to the classroom. Well, we had written the steps down, and we had a student go to deliver coffee. Well, the student stopped at the bathroom and used the restroom while he was delivering coffee, and he just sat the coffee on top of the in the bathroom and then picked it up after he finished using the restroom and left the bathroom. Lots of sanitary issues here, obviously, but we left that out of the task analysis. We did not put walk straight from room 6 to your destination without stopping at the bathroom. So sometimes you have to not only watch someone perform it when you're developing the task analysis, but go back and evaluate and think of things that maybe you would have left out. This is just an example using partial participation within each step of a task analysis for making a blender drink. This shows you what the teacher does, what the learner does. And this may have a goal of encouraging the learner to be more active in the routine, to make choices, or to have more control. And you can see here what the learner may do and what they're able to do when making a blender drink. So now that we've discussed a few of the strategies for writing a quality task analysis, now we need to think about how we are going to actually teach the task analysis to the students. So we know that chaining is a method for teaching sequential skills, or skills that require several steps and that are accomplished in a set order. So for example, all of our household jobs and hygiene tasks have multiple steps with a particular order to them. Think about laundry, cooking, brushing teeth, shampooing your hair. But so do many academic skills, such as multiplying 2-digit numbers in your math class. There are 3 types of chaining procedures. You have forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task chaining. Forward chaining is just what you might expect. It involves teaching the initial step first. Instead of directing your teaching efforts on the last step that isn't done independently, you find the first step that the child needs to learn and work forward through the task analysis. For example, you might teach a child to measure the right amount of laundry detergent on his own before you teach the next step in order. In forward chaining, the teacher then usually guides the child through the remaining not yet learned steps in the task analysis. So say there's 10 steps in the task analysis. The student performs the first the first step, and the teacher reinforces that. And then the teacher would complete steps 2 through 10. And then once the child learns each step, they work forward only one at a time through the task analysis. So then they would perform step 2, lots of reinforcement. The teacher would complete 3 through 10. The student would complete 1, 2, and 3, lots of reinforcement, and the teacher would complete steps 4 through 10. The teaching efforts are focused on where the child is and where they need to move forward in the task analysis. Backwards chaining technique moves a student from the last part of the task to the beginning. The decision to use either forward chaining or backward chaining is dependent on the student and the task. An analysis of the task and the student's ability level will help the teacher decide which chaining procedure is the best for the student. So backwards chaining involves the same process as forward chaining, but the teaching process begins at the end of the sequence and moves to the beginning. Backward chaining is used when a student can be taught a task easier from the last step of the task than the first. The student is provided with assistance through the process until the last step. The student is encouraged to complete the last step alone. If prompts are provided, then they are faded as soon as possible so that that last step is independent. When the last step is mastered, the student is provided help until she or he is able to perform the step before the last one. Each step is mastered prior to the final step, and the student is completing more and more ending steps independently until she or he is able to do it without any assistance. So let's think of an example of that one. A student is able to pull on all of his clothes independently. He can even put on his shoes, but he is unable to tie them because he becomes very frustrated. A school teacher suggests a backward chaining technique for the student to learn to tie the shoes. So he is reinforced following the dressing task. He's reinforced when he puts on his shoes. The adult ties the first shoe for the student except for pulling the laces tight at the end of the sequence. This process is repeated on the other shoe. So the student is reinforced for pulling the laces tight on both shoes. He's not required to do anything but that. When he masters that step, then he is required to assist with the pushing the loop through the hole. After succeeding that, he would be taught based on the completion of the step before. So then the next step would be to teach the student to put on his socks, his shirt, and his shoes. Finally, he would learn to tie his shoes. Then the dressing process would be complete. Since the student does not know how to button his shirt, that may be another chaining process that you could use as tying his shoe. So the shoe tying task must be analyzed to determine each step in the sequence. If the student is unable to move from one step to the other, you might have to break down even into smaller tasks so that the student can actually be successful. In order for any of the chaining program to be successful, it is necessary that the task is broken down into the smallest steps necessary for the child to learn. And this is individualized based on not only the student but also the task at hand. Students may demonstrate some of the steps of the chain, and that allows the teacher to chain steps together faster. However, designing and implementing this type of instruction, the student must complete all the steps in the correct order. Total task training, the student is given opportunity to perform each step every time. Total task presentation is a variation of forward chaining because it has the addition to reinforcers after every step. If you look across the research that compares the different types of chaining methods, all of them have been proven successful. There are different advantages to different types of chaining, but that also depends on the task and the student. But overall, each method has been proven successful with different types of task. Task analysis, task analytic instruction is an evidence-based practice, and using forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task chaining are ways to teach task analysis. So this is just a summary slide to remind you that teaching a skill that consists of multiple steps, or a chain skill, for students with disabilities requires task analytic instruction. Systematically teaching the steps of a task analysis is called chaining, and the three ways that we can do that are forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task chaining.